Hello, Knockouts. Tonya TKO here, and I'm a self-love specialist and relationship expert from TonyaTKO.com. I help you learn how to love yourself and each other. Today, we're talking about an article entitled, "My Husband Shares Me with His Best Friend, and I Didn't Even Know It." And then she goes into detail. So I'm going to read this post for you. And then we're going to jump into, I thought it was pretty interesting and I thought it was something that you should hear and that we should discuss. So it's pretty long, so just bear with me. All right. So here she go. Not sure where to start this. I've been with my husband for 11 years, married for 9, and we have 6-year-old twin boys together. I can honestly say he's the love of my life, and our marriage/relationship has always been very strong. I made the discovery at the start of December, but I decided to put it on hold until Christmas/New Year's was done and the boys was back in school. I just didn't have the mental/emotional energy to deal with this along with the holidays. I found out when I was downstairs watching Netflix while he was upstairs about to take a quick shower and come join me. He shouted out for me to put a towel and some night clothes on our bed for when he gets out, as he'd forgotten to. As I enter our bedroom with the stuff, I see his phone charging on the side of the desk, lighting up with messages. And so naturally, I pick it up to see who's texting, and it's his friend, who we'll call David. All right. I read the text, and I won't go into details, but it was so highly charged at my expense that I was shocked upon belief. Now, feeling like I need to know everything, I put in his passcode and go through all his messaging apps to see if I can find more of what he's been doing with David. I quickly go through his apps and discover that WhatsApp is their chosen place to grossly violate my rights. I'm sure they've used other apps like Snapchat that automatically delete chats, but I can't speculate. I go through all their messages together, and from what I could tell, it's been going on since about June, July. Many of the texts were of David and my husband discussing me. David telling my husband things he'd do to me. My husband telling him everything about our lovemaking, and even things like the first time we did it. They text about what underwear I'm wearing too, if I've shaved or not. The grossest thing was when I viewed all of my personal pictures I sent to my husband was all sent to him. And I mean literally everything, from even silly little selfies I'd send my husband would also be shared with David. From what I could tell, there's been so many instances where my husband has let David listen in on the phone while we were making love. I can't explain the way I felt other than it was a mix of shame, embarrassment, betrayal, disgusted, used, shocked, and majorly confused. I quickly banged on the bathroom door and confronted him straight away. I was met with him looking completely shell-shocked and denying everything. He grabbed the phone out of my hands and tried to argue about me snooping through his personal conversations, but that only lasted a couple of minutes before he broke down asking for forgiveness. He wasn't crying, but I could feel he was being genuine with apologizing. Oh, Lord. We didn't really have a conversation either, but more of an emotional argument with him just sitting on the bed saying nothing, looking like like he has PTSD. It was so hard to scream because our boys being in the next room, and it was too emotional to try and have a grown-up conversation with him, so it ended when I threw him out of our room to sleep downstairs. I slept probably 2 hours the whole night, and when I finally fell asleep, I was awoken by him at 5 a.m. asking me to forgive him and forget it all. At that point in time, I couldn't allow myself to even look at him without wanting to physically punch him in the face. something I've never wanted to do to anyone in my entire life. We tried to talk about it when the most piece of information out of him being, I can't explain exactly why I did it. We stopped talking once the boys were up, and I just said, we'll talk when the time is right. I couldn't bring myself to sleep in the same bed as him for 2 weeks, but I slowly allowed him back in. We had small conversations about it, but agreed to leave it until 2019 fully kicks off, so we can deal with it then. We haven't had sex since I found out, and every time he tries to initiate something sexual, I just can't stomach him. I've kissed him, I told him I loved him, and cuddled a couple of times. One of the things I can't get over is how David has been coming to our house all this time, and all the while knowing everything intimate about me. I've truthfully never enjoyed David's company. He's very obnoxious, loud, show-off, and can be very rude. He's always been very flirty with me, which has always made me dislike him even more. And with my knowledge, I just feel disgusted with him. Him and my husband have been friends for 7 to 8 years. Wouldn't call them best friends, but they do. Now we'll never hang out regularly. Anyhow, how do I deal with him? As much as I'm disgusted. So stupid. As much as I'm disgusted with my husband, I still love him. So divorce is off the table. How do I deal with this violation I feel constantly now? How do I bring this up with my husband in a mature way in order for us to move on? Thank you if you read my problem. I can't speak to anyone I know about this. So giving my last look for advice to the internet. Oh, Lord, listen. There's so much in here, so much. But I'll say this. The very first thing that floats out to me is about how she is in denial. First, let me ask you, what would you do in this situation? Write your comments below. First thing is she's in denial. And she wants to, and she has and denial seems to be, or avoiding seems to be her go-to. Like she was like, I'll avoid this during the holidays until 2019. She even told him we'll have a real discussion then, but meanwhile she's now kissing him and stuff. She mentions that they're not having sex, which means that that's something that's on her mind. She's just going through it. And she's coming to the internet trying to figure out, how does she move on from here? There are a few different things. There are a lot of people who are like, divorce, divorce, divorce. This woman is saying she doesn't want to be divorced. She doesn't want to divorce him because she loves him so much. My first initial thought is, who does she really love? Who does she really love? Because she doesn't really truly know her husband and his proclivities. So like, remember we talked about this before, about knowing your partner's fetish. Like I can imagine that him and this man, there's something going on with it. Look, this is apparently some sort of fetish of his where he's discussing these intimate details. They used a picture of a black woman for this article. So I'm imagining a woman who wrote, maybe black. She's foreign born, most likely England, because she used an S in the word apologizing. And I'm imagining that her husband is Caucasian. The vast majority of black relationships, black-white relationships in England are interracial. So I imagine that they're an interracial relationship, that this man has a fetish for her, so does his friend, and that they masturbate talking about his wife and the threesome that they're going to have. And I imagine that this whole thing, I imagine he's pumping things up. First of all, what a tremendous violation of trust. How do you go back from there? And how many other times has your trust been violated? She claims that this started June, July. How many of you think that this started June, July? Really? How many? They've been together for 11 years. How many of you think that this was the first time that he's been, and this man, they've been friends for 8 years, 7 to 8 years. You think this man just came out of the blue one day and was like, oh, they probably met surrounding the fetish that this other guy probably has. And that was probably the plan. There's some things that she's not telling, because I can imagine that he tried to mention the threesome to her before and she shut it down and pretended like, oh no. But this is what I'm saying. We really have to listen to our partners when they tell us their fetishes and their fantasies, because if we are not down, like she's talking about how disgusted she is, etc. So apparently she's not down for this. And if our partner has a fetish that we're repulsed by, we may seriously need to consider whether or not that's the direction that we want to go in. So they've been together for 11 years and they have twin boys who are 6, which means they have 5 years of getting to know each other without the children involved. I personally don't think that they're going to be able to get past this in a way that is going to be okay with her. Like, they're going to need some sort of serious therapy. They're going to need to really dive into this sexual fetish that they have. And this guy, who's a quote unquote friend, that friendship needs to be cut off. How do you come back from that? That he's already seen you naked, that your husband is violating your trust and privacy by recording your lovemaking for this man. He might have even, one of my thoughts is that he probably had cameras set up to show the guy. I don't think that this husband can be trusted. I think that a violation this deep penetrates into the character of this person and some psychoses that exist there. This is on a whole other level. If your partner is not down with the threesome and not down with this, you got to respect your partner's wishes, but this is not respect right here. This is not respect. And then to keep this friend around, violating his wife's trust, sending the man, so this man is her other boyfriend. I don't understand this. Sending him silly selfies and all, it's too much. I don't see how they can get past this. This man is going to need some very deep, intensive therapy. And so is she. She's going to need to come to grips with what are some of the other things, the avoidant technique that she uses to navigate through her life, so that she just forgets and suppresses and pushes down and dissociates from the things that are most painful and really needing to be addressed, and hoping that they'll just go away. I want to hear your thoughts below. I thought this was really interesting, and I'm at a loss for words. So listen, on that note, I'm going to jump into the comments to read the comments with you, and we'll talk there. So Tonya TKO, and I'm out. Go out there and love one another. Most importantly, love yourself. Love yourself. And in loving yourself, make sure that you create boundaries and deal breakers that you honor. And when a person crosses your boundary, you correct them right away. And honor yourself by honoring your deal breakers. This woman is not honoring herself in continuing to want to be in partnership with a fantasy, because the person she's in partnership with is not really her husband. She's created the image of a human being inside of her mind, which is not her husband. Her husband is showing her who he is, and she doesn't want to listen. She wants to go back to pretending he is who she has imagined him to be, but he's showing exactly who he is. And on that note, Tonya TKO, and I'm out. Peace.